What's up, guys? This is Show and Tell. My name is Jesse Hughes.
And I'm Daniel A. Gilmore.
We're talking about Dan's last recommendation, American Splendor.
2003.
Paul Giamatti. Who directed it? I didn't even check that.
It was two people.
Two people directed it.
Sherry Springer Berman and Robert Pulcini. I don't know.
Have they directed anything else?
I didn't actually look at their IMDb, but they are documentarians.
Well, that makes sense.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
If you've watched this movie.
That absolutely makes sense. I loved this movie. Absolutely.
Well, good, because I was about to say we're going to cut straight to the bullshit. We aren't friends and this podcast is over.
No.
I thought you would, though.
Loved this movie.
But again,
I think all documentaries should be filmed the way this movie was filmed. I want to be in the situation where they were sitting down and talking about doing this as a documentary, like I assume they did, and then having the film morph into what it is as this, drama / comedy / documentary / whatever it is. It's absolutely fantastic.
So before we get into it, I just wanted to ask you, did you know anything about the movie?
Absolutely nothing. I knew it was a comic movie, like in lists of top 10 comic book movies. Mm-hmm. It's always there. So I wanted to watch it based on that. I knew it was, a very down-to-earth comic movie, and I knew it was about a comic strip. That's all I knew.
Okay. So you knew it was a comic, at least.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. That was one of the things I was wondering. Oh, so they're trick-or-treating.
Right.
It's in the 60s. He's a kid.
Yeah.
Or is it 50s?
It would have to be the 40s or 50s based on...
No, it was the 50s, though.
Yeah.
And he just goes... oh, you're Batman, you're Robin, Green Lantern. And that's literally the only...
Yeah, it starts off there, and then as he's walking, great transition into here's him as a child, here's him as an adult. Nothing much has changed.
He's still grumbling.
It's Paul Giamatti. Paul Giamatti is to me as Rufus Sewell is to you. I wish he was in more stuff. He's in a lot of stuff, but he's not in a lot of good stuff. So.
Well, yeah, and that's my issue. Like, Paul Giamatti, fantastic actor.
Yeah, love him.
Again, the same as we were talking about, knocks it out the park every time. Mm-hmm. Same thing with...
Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, Phoenix.
Yeah, exactly. He's
fantastic
always,
performance.
He's always fantastic,
movie.
Yeah.
But not always the best movies.
Not always the best movies, exactly.
He's just like... why is everyone so stupid? And I was just like, I ask myself that all the time.
Exactly.
That's what I wrote.
Cynical from the get-go, so you know what kind of character this is going to be. I like the intro. It's a very old school vibe, musically and visually, and I had to double check to see when the movie was filmed, because I was going, I think this is in the 2000s, but it looks like it's a movie from the 70s or 80s. Yeah. When you think period piece, you think, late, like 1800s or 1900s, but this is really a period piece. This is a movie that feels like it exists in the 70s and 80s. And that's what's really cool about the filming, and there's kind of a grain over the film, and there's the jazzy soundtrack at the beginning. It's like a low bit rate saxophone kind of jazz. It fits in with when it took place. It really feels like it came from that era, even though it was filmed 20 years later.
And I just like, it's like the comic book stills. Mm-hmm. And then it's like him walking, and then he's like, people have drawn me different ways, and shows some of the different, and I was like, the real Harvey.
Mm-hmm, yeah, clever direction that kind of sets up that this is a little bit of a different movie. Mm-hmm. And then from the beginning jumps into the first documentary scene, and that's what kind of sets the tone for what kind of movie it is. I was watching with my wife, so first of all, if you're going to watch this movie, if you haven't yet, watch it with somebody. It's a hilarious movie. It's very touching, but it's also really funny, and it's just a great movie to share with somebody.
That's because he's a real dude, though, or was at least.
Jumping into the documentary kind of reminded me of Look Around You, the mockumentary show, the British show, and we just started laughing at the orange soda and the just kind of the banter between him and the director, and I was like, is this part of the movie, or it became apparent after a couple minutes, okay, this is the real Harvey Picar, and they're making this movie / documentary about his life, basically. Yeah. And he is played by Paul Giamatti.
Yeah, and he's narrating it. Mm-hmm. And he's just kind of like, well, here I am. And he's just like, shitty job, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, he sounds like everybody I know.
Jumping into like Rob's apartment, all of the vinyl. I love it. Not Rob's apartment, I'm sorry. Harvey's apartment. Rob is what it reminded me of. Rob from High Fidelity. Rob would be proud of the collection. He would be ashamed of the organizing.
The state it was in.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, my first note on Paul Giamatti, because he's when he has the vocal node, and just Paul killing it off the bat.
Absolutely, yeah. And I was going, I hope for his sake he doesn't have to do this the whole movie, but it is a consistent character trait. It
comes on and off.
Yeah, exactly. He's not raspy through the movie, but it makes sense for this character who's very cynical. That he's always, when he gets upset, it kind of ramps up into this yelling that causes him to lose his voice from time to time. The scene when he finally goes in and he's talking to his soon-to-be ex-wife, and his voice has gone to just completely he's lipping it, and then the end of every sentence is just a squeak, and then the camera moves to his back, and then he's just, his hands are up in the air, and we just hear him squeaking, and at that point we don't know what he's saying because we can't read his lips. We had to rewind that a couple times because it was so funny.
My next note there was just this plebeian lifestyle.
Plebeian.
I was like, what a bitch.
Plebeian.
Yeah, then he repeats it later. Plebeian.
And then he's a file clerk. I used to do that.
Yeah.
So what he's doing, I used to do.
Yes, this was you, Jesse.
It was kind of a therapeutic job, I thought. I didn't want to do it for the rest of my life.
Which obviously he's a career clerk.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So then Mr. Boats is introduced.
Mr. Boats.
And he comes out and he says, avoid the reeking herd, shun the polluted flock, live like the stoic bird, the eagle of the rock. And he goes, do you know what that is?
Yeah.
And it's just great. I was like, hey, nobody that I know at least talks like this. I would like to hang around some like well-read people.
Exactly.
And I looked it up afterwards, and that was Eleanor Hoyt Wiley.
Okay.
And the actual poem is Eagle and the Mole. And it's a bit longer than that. That was just literally like the first verse.
Right.
Super good, though.
Right.
Recommend they look it up, or you look it up. So the cool thing I thought was looking at the trivia stuff, that all the documentary stuff was shot in one day.
That just kind of shows you how the kind of performer he was, which we see later in the movie with the Letterman clips that they show, that are real. He was just a performer, and he didn't mean to be, and that's
it's just his personality.
Why he was successful in what he did. I liked garage sales. I love garage sales.
So. It cuts to the past again, and it's the '60s at that point,
right?
And he meets Bob Crumb, Robert Crumb, as it were, famous cartoonist and artist and writer. And I was just like, yeah, Robert Crumb. And he mentions that he had a movie, which was this Wyckoff 1994 film. 1994.
Have you seen that?
Yes, I own that as well.
Good movie?
It's a documentary. It's very interesting because I'm a fan of some of his work.
Right.
So it's always interesting to hear that.
Another really good performance. I don't know who the actor was that played Robert Crumb.
His
laugh was very distinct, and I feel like based on watching the movie and seeing the real characters, it was probably a character trait that he probably nailed.
That was James Urbaniak, or I'm not 100% sure. He does a lot of voice acting and normal acting as well, and I know you watch cartoons. Most notably would be like Dr. Venture. He does a bunch of voices on Venture Brothers.
Very cool. So at this point was when I realized the way they were presenting the movie was absolutely perfect for the subject of the movie, which is this author of graphic novels or these little comic books. So the story in the movie is just all these little snippets. So what's really cool is you could watch any 5 to 10 minute snippet of this movie. Like someone could just show you a snippet of these little stories in the movie, and they are all watchable on their own without having to see the whole movie. And that's a really brilliant way to present a movie about a comic book artist.
And then he just kind of talks about how he stayed friends with Bob for a while, even though he had gotten famous.
Well, so his scene with Robert Crumb at the bus stop is kind of where we discover the desire of the main character of Harvey, is that he just wants to be remembered. He wants to leave something behind. Okay, so then he's, then let's make a comic. And he starts to try, he wants to be the artist and the author, and he draws stick figures. At that moment, he's like, nope, this isn't going to work.
He starts, and then then it cuts in, it's him in the grocery store.
Right, and then he starts to see his life as a comic.
Yes.
And that's his inspiration. And we've all been in that situation behind the person in line who is...
Well, he's like, it's a risky move. She's the only one in line, but it's an old Jewish woman.
Right. It's a strategy game, going to the store and picking the line that you're going to. And I loved the thought bubbles popping up, and then, he's got his comic version of himself appearing behind him as his shoulder angel / devil, telling him, here's what you should do, here's what you shouldn't do. So then he jumps into storyboards.
Yeah, and so that's how I write my comics, because I've worked on some stuff. Yeah. But I'm not an artist in that sense as a comic artist.
You could be.
No, I'm not. I couldn't.
No? You don't think so? I don't think so.
If I only drew myself, yeah.
Exactly, yeah, that'd be fun. It's the Dan show.
Yeah, but just like kind of stick figures with dialogue and maybe action notes.
Yeah. And that's what he does to get his story across. And I liked the time-lapse transition was really cool. Zooms in on him, and then the daylight comes in, and then it zooms back out.
And he's got all the papers, yeah.
Yeah, the transition with the music was also really cool, from what he would have been listening to at night to, what's happening during the day, to kind of accentuate the action of basically what's going on in his head, was kind of how I interpreted it. But then he presents,
he cuts
this.
in the next morning in the diner with Bob again.
Yeah, who's very, subtle in his approach to how he's feeling about it. But a great line from Harvey, Paul Giamatti's character. There's no idealized shit. That really encompasses the movie itself and, of course, his stories.
Well, because he says you made yourself a comic hero. Mm-hmm. He's like, yeah, but not idealized.
Yeah, exactly. He's the hero of the comic, but it's in a real world. Mm. Ordinary life is pretty complex stuff. Another great line and very true. And then he can talk again, and he's like, "Well, you sound fine just now, just a minute ago." It's like, I guess you cured me, man.
Yeah, that was the best because he squeaks it out and then gets like super loud and his normal voice again.
And that's another one of his consistent traits is that he'll end his sentences either he's excited or angry or frustrated, whatever it is, with man, whether he's talking to a man or a woman.
Mm-hmm. Him living his life and then like the comics.
Yeah, so the comics are, his life is transitioning into comics, and we're seeing, this montage of all the different issues he's coming up with, and then it goes into his break room at work where he's sharing the comic with everybody at work and talking about, you're in it.
Yeah, this is the first time we're introduced to Toby, who Judah Friedlander, I thought playing kind of off character for him. And he just says something about like, he can't quit his day job when he's talking about the comics. What is it? But should he?
Yeah.
Like, that's what his comic is about. Like,
right. Well, that's true. Good point. and then they go back into the documentary, but then Paul Giamatti and the actor that's playing Toby walks into the documentary scene. So it's kind of this mind melt kind of situation where it's like, okay, so not only is this, I viewed it as a documentary with flashbacks, but now it's a documentary where they're also part of the documentary, but they're acting out what's going on. So just kind of the presentation of the movie was just constantly evolving, and it was always like...
But it's cool to see them next to each other, too.
Yeah, it was really clever. No, it was fantastic. Yeah. I thought it was great. I just didn't expect it,
And then just Toby still eating the jelly beans.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
that's cherry and that's cinnamon.
Yeah.
You can tell just by looking at them.
No, I have to taste them.
I got to put it in my mouth.
Yeah, it was really cool to see, that first moment between Harvey and Toby, and then they jump off of set, into their chairs as the real Harvey and Toby are having the same type of interaction, just to kind of show, hey, here's how accurate this movie is. He meets someone that he used to know.
Yeah, from college.
He talks about, my life is horrible because I work and then I spend a lot of time by myself reading books. And she says, you're luckier than you think. I don't have time to do anything like that. I've got kids, I've got a husband, I've got a job, I've got this life. And I was like, that's a very good perspective, because you grow into this job and this life where you have enough to live comfortably, but you don't have time to enjoy it. Maybe that's a situation she's in, and he's in a situation where he does have downtime that he's able to enjoy because he doesn't have, the money to spend on the pleasantries because he's not having to work, so hard and so long to make that money. So it's I thought it was a cool perspective.
She goes like, I'm married and a mother, and then you just see his face change.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, why are you talking to me?
Why am I talking? Yeah, exactly. And that's probably how all of his interactions with women are.
He's ordering day-old bread.
Yeah. He knocks it on the counter like he's upset about it. It's like, you ordered it, dude.
Yeah. You got any of that day-old bread in back there? Then it introduced the other love interest in the movie.
She's got good-looking handwriting. That was another one.
Well, I watched this with our friend Sterling.
Oh, did you?
And I was like, I would bang handwriting if I could. And he's like, you would, and then he just was calligraphy would just be smut to you.
At this point, we're introduced to Joyce, and again, it's another character that's introduced that you just relish every moment. That character is on camera, and again, going back to just the way the film takes these snippets of life and makes them all watchable on their own. It's because of these characters that are all have these very specific and unique traits that they feel very real and they feel very intriguing. You want to watch them, you want to hear what they have to say, and you want to see the relationships between them.
It starts as, it's a pen pal kind of thing. She writes him just to get a comic.
Yeah.
And then he's like, let's talk.
Like, you're a girl.
Yeah.
And he's writing on his bed, and then he punches a hole through the paper and then pulls another page out and still writing on the bed. This is how one-track minded he is. I gotta write this letter.
And then eventually, it becomes a friendship, and they're talking, and he's like, how can I convince you to come out here? And her hang up on it, she's not sure what he looks like because different comic artists have drawn him. Right. And she says, you look like a young Marlon Brando in some of those.
And then the other one.
And the other one's like, you look like with those stink lines. Yeah, and he goes, those are motion lines.
and it's funny because he is a happy medium in between those two things. He's not stinky and nasty and hairy, but he's not a young Marlon Brando or an old Marlon Brando.
I just like I'm an active guy.
Yeah, I'm an active. I loved.
And then finally, he's just, well, come out here and I'll be whatever you want me to be.
Yeah, and then she's like, that's a problem because I am a what's the line? I'm a notorious reformer. And then before that, she's arguing about why they should meet up, and you should meet. I wish we could do audio clips because I can't deliver this the way he does, but you should meet me because I'm a great guy.
Yeah. Really?
I'm divorced, thank God. She says that. Yeah, just fantastic. And then, the concept of multiple artists, again, is revisited. So that's what colors, her idea of what he is. So, again, it's really clever because, of course, this is a long-running comic, so it has multiple artists. So she doesn't know what to expect, which is really cool.
Well, and then, she walks out and she sees, the drawing of him sitting on the bench.
Yeah, that's a fantastic scene. So she's seeing all these comic book versions of him, and then he just saunters into frame. It's
and
just
he goes, Joyce? You Joyce?
Yeah. And then his first confession to her.
I had a vasectomy. And then he just immediately turns away and walks away.
But this ends up saving him. I mean, he's coming clean right now. This could be an issue. Women, a lot of women want children. I had a vasectomy. We can't. Let's go.
But I just like that. I had a vasectomy, and then immediately just walks
off. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then they're at dinner, and she's kind of nervous and looking around.
Why are we here?
Yeah.
He's like, I wouldn't eat here.
Yeah, he's like, it doesn't seem like the place you would eat.
Yeah. I loved the line.
And my line was just trying to impress people, because we've all been just
exactly.
Taking yourself out of a comfort zone.
Right.
To show off or something.
There's a lot of little lines in this movie that, would be delivered, and it was usually by Harvey, where he would say it and then they would continue with dialogue and I would laugh about it about 10 to 20 seconds later. Just kind of, that's a lot of the lines in this movie, just kind of gets under your skin, and then you just realize how subtly funny it is. And one of those lines was, ever since I got a cat, I've had trouble eating animals.
Oh yeah,
who says that?
He's like, oh, there's a lot of meat on this menu.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is really her scene, I feel, because she's just listing all the problems with her.
Yeah. And which reveals that they are perfect for each other.
I couldn't deal with that hypochondriac.
Well, he could.
And then, so they're at his house. She asks for some Advil and water.
I love when they walk in. Again, I'm the guy that's always taking down lines and laughing at stuff. The truth is, I've got a serious problem with cleanliness. Again, he's just coming clean, and he's saying it in the most blatant way possible, which is really smart.
Yeah, I was gonna clean up for you, but I figured why put on airs.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not a clean person.
Yeah,
I love it.
I could wash a dish 10 times and it'd still be dirty.
And then they kiss, and it's a really sweet kiss. It's like, hey, we're kind of alike. Let me kiss you. And then she starts to feel sick, and then he starts to feel horny, and that's and then it kind of goes two different ways.
Well, let's skip the whole courtship and just get married.
Yeah, her spraying the WD-40 in the bathroom. It's fantastic. Like, first of all, why does he have WD-40 in the bathroom, and why doesn't she know that it's WD-40?
She doesn't seem like the kind of person that would have known what WD-40 was.
But he's very sweet at his core. He jumps right into she's feeling bad, and I love his.
Oh, I bought you tea.
Again, when he gets excited or he's confused or whatever it is, he gets really rambunctious, and so he's like knocking on the door. He's like, "Oh, hold on, I'll get you tea." Does a little rap on the door and then runs off, and he's got a bunch of boxes of tea that have never been opened. He just has them. Probably found them.
She's
in a
like, "Why do you have so
sale.
much tea?" And she's like, "Well, I was talking to you, and you drank a lot of it."
Yeah. And I just loved it. Really sweet scene, and of course is recreated in the shabby play version. But yeah, let's just get married, which again sounds like these characters. They've been involved in divorces, so they do, they make rash decisions, and here's another one.
Immediately cuts to Toby just eating a bunch of White Castle, and my note is I miss White Castle because we don't have them down in Southwest Florida.
I've had it once and I liked it. I mean, it was the balance between cheapness and taste was good.
Oh, White Castle's delicious, man. I mean, maybe it's in my head now because it's been so long since I've had it.
I don't think it was amazing, but it was good. Like, I would eat it again if there was one near me.
Yeah, I was when I was living in Indiana, there was one, but I was broke, so I couldn't eat there.
Oh man,
you
should be able to scrounge up a couple
just out of reach.
Just go in and just tell them how you feel.
That was a bad point in my life.
Like, I will talk about you in a podcast if you just
one day
give me 4 White Castle burgers. But going back real quick, just one last funny line from the scene between them before they decide to get married. man, am I glad I talked you into coming up here.
Oh, yeah.
In essence, in a romance, that's a cheesy kind of line, but this movie makes those campy lines really conversational, and they are very organic coming from the characters that they come from. And then they make the pina coladas reference as it transitions into the next scene.
Oh,
he's
yeah, you like pina
Toby.
coladas.
Yeah, I didn't even catch it. My wife mentioned it. Amy mentioned it.
Playing the pina colada song.
And I just laughed. It was funny. And then this is the second scene you see with Toby. And
third, technically.
Is it the third? Okay.
Because the first one is when Mr. Boat snatches the book out of his hand.
Yeah. It's not polite to grab things from people. I love Toby, and I love this scene. This is, again, another scene that I could just show to someone and be like, you want to watch this movie? Watch this scene. If you think it's a good scene, watch the movie.
But he goes, what are you doing this weekend? Because he's going to go to Delaware to get married. And he's driving to Toledo to see a movie.
Yeah.
So my first note was just, what movie is playing in Toledo that you're driving to see from Cleveland?
Revenge of the Nerds. That's the only one.
And then my next note, Revenge of the Nerds.
It's the only thing you have a good excuse for.
Yeah. And then just him talking about Revenge of the Nerds. This movie has uplifted me.
And he hasn't even seen it yet.
Well, did he? Because he's talking about the ending of the movie.
That's true. Yeah, I guess he could have seen it.
Which is even better if he has driven more than once to Toledo to see this movie.
Yeah, he's going
Dude, you're talking about the ending of the movie? Like, I would have punched this guy.
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, because you haven't seen Revenge of the Nerds.
I haven't seen it in a long time. I've seen it. I've seen it.
Lies.
I don't believe you.
I do.
You're just tired of me shaming you.
Yeah.
And then Harvey gets out of the car and takes his fries, which he explicitly said you can
only have a couple.
Yeah, which is 2 at most. And then another really sweet moment. He's talked about this movie. He's in the car about to go see it, but then he reveals his true intentions. He says, Harvey, when are you getting married? When are you coming back? I want to see the movie with you. You need to see this movie. And I've been there before. I'm like, I'm going to go see this movie. Oh, I can't go. Well, I'm going to wait because you need to see this movie. And maybe he's seen it before. And he, I've been in that situation. That's awesome. Cuts then to the documentary again, and this is that line the real Joyce delivers. She said Harvey tends to be very depressed and therefore very depressing. She's referencing his writing. And it's true. There's a depressing nature to it, but it's like darkly comic.
Well, that's the whole point of why that comic is popular, right? Because you can relate to, working in retail or some kind of dead-end job, maybe.
Right. But it works because it's real.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. It's something, if it's real, you can relate to it.
Yeah. But I mean, in terms of his character trait, depression is just a character trait for him. It's something that he feels every day, but he's made it something that he can cope with every day. By finding these life lessons in it. And that's why the comic really works, and that's why he works as a character who, as a person, basically, who continues to exist.
Well, not anymore. He's dead.
Is he? Oh, okay. See, I didn't go that far to find out.
He died in 2010.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. Well, I knew he'd been dead.
How old was he?
That I'm not sure about.
Oh, okay.
We could find that out.
He looked to be 60s, 70s, late 60s, early 70s.
I imagine if it was 2003 and if he was a kid in the 50s, so he's like 60.
Makes sense, yeah.
Ish.
Math. But yeah, then they jump into her addressing, the disorders that all of his friends or the people throughout the movie and therefore characters in the comic have. And, I realized we all have a disorder.
Because it's her reforming.
Mm-hmm, yeah, exactly.
And she's trying to move into this house now and get rid of his records or books.
Right.
And she's making like a box. He's like, no, you're not getting rid of my 78s.
Right.
You're not doing this. Just give me time. I'll do it. I'm not good at this stuff.
Right.
And then she's like, no, because you're OCD, you're not going to be able to do this. And then she says you're from the DS3, which I guess is the handbook for disorders. And I guess Sterling was saying we're on like 6 now.
Sterling knows what's up.
He knows. But then, she just clips with characters.
Saying what their disorder is.
Yes.
But I mean, I was going, we all have a disorder. And she
has problems too.
She can see, exactly.
But she never addresses.
That's the funny thing.
That he's in the store just buying a bunch of tea. And then Sterling's like, oh, that makes you a good guy. You're buying tea for her? Like, just let her do her thing.
That was his first good act, and he's hung on to that ever since.
Yeah. But then he gets back to the apartment, she's still sleeping. He just starts, he throws like a box of tea at her.
Yeah.
Then he looks down, has the voicemail, plays it. And it's them asking him to come out to Letterman to promote the book.
Then it jumps into the hotel room with the orange
soda in the chiller.
And I'm going, they don't drink at all, which is kind of cool. There's never any reference of them drinking, even though, it's a common thing with depressed people. But
and Sterling mentioned that too. He's like, does he not drink? Why are you depressed? I'm like, I get depressed when I'm not drinking too. Like, if you have a problem, you got a problem.
Get a little orange soda, sugar and caffeine in you. Does orange soda have caffeine in it?
Yeah.
It should. I thought the use of the old Letterman footage was really cool.
That was my note. I love it when they do that in movies, because there's a few movies where they'll do that, and they'll like the real character walk off, and then like immediately into like a real clip.
Yeah, which I thought was a really cool way to meld. Again, to meld this documentary with this interpretation.
Well, and it works even better because as a documentary with the real Harvey in it as well.
Right.
So it was like a trivia. I don't know if you saw that one. In that scene, the first clip, he's actually wearing the real jacket.
Oh, yeah.
That Harvey P. Carr wore in the interview.
Oh, that's really cool. Oh, okay, that is a really cool touch.
And then but then it shows and they bring him back a couple times.
Yeah, so this as a whole, like this whole segment of the movie with the Letterman scenes was for me the only lull in the movie. But this was probably a period in his life that most people watching the movie would recognize because they saw him on TV. So I understand why it's in there. But that was really my only issue with it, was that it just went on a little long. It felt like it was in contrast to the approach they were taking to the movie.
And then obviously, I don't know if you noticed, the last bit where he's on Letterman is with Paul Giamatti.
Right.
And they wouldn't lease him the rights to that scene.
Yeah, I read that. And when I read that piece of trivia, I read it as they wouldn't lease the rights to all of the Letterman stuff. So when they showed the first Letterman thing, I turned to Amy and I was like, these are actors. This is amazing. That guy looks just like Letterman. And I was like, I'm so confused. And then I looked up the trivia again. I was like, oh, okay, never mind. I didn't want to ruin anything for her. And then it was, and so my only thing is in the last scene where it's Paul Giamatti and the guy that plays Letterman. We don't ever see him, but he's terrible. Yeah. His voice is like, he's not even trying. Yeah. I'm like, did you guys not, like, you could have redubbed that after you listened to it and went.
You kind of see him too. And I was like, even then, he doesn't even look like him. But the voice, nothing like him.
No, not at all. Like, and it sounds cliche, but the theme of this point in the movie being that fame isn't everything. I like that Joyce personifies that need for more than attention and money. That she's kind of the one that pulls him out of, he's clearly just doing this for money, and for good reason. They need money, but
especially if she wasn't working.
Right, exactly. So, but she kind of personifies that part of him that says, hey, it needs to be for more than money.
Yeah, and then it cuts. Joyce leaves. And he finds that he has a tumor, or a lump on his balls. But he's trying to draw comics, and he's kind of frustrated. And my note was just like, this has been years now. His art has not progressed at all. He's still doing stick figures.
Right. And then her ultimatum is, I'll do it without you. And then just gets up and walks away. And knowing that is going to lead, of course, because she's part of his life in such a big way, to him, conceding to her idea of documenting.
Well, and he says in that scene too, like, I don't know how to be positive.
Yeah.
Which I love that line.
Yeah. But then, as they've discovered that he has cancer and she invites the artist in to start.
Who brings the daughter. And as soon as you see him, I don't know if I was just like, you're adopting that kid.
Yeah.
But no, then she's like, what do you got there? And it's a horse. And she's like, it's a pony. I'm like, that's a horse.
It's a horse.
I was like, bitch, that's a horse.
And then we see again him coming back to his desire to be remembered before he collapses on the floor, walks into the bedroom and just asks Joyce, will people remember me? And then collapses to the floor, and Joyce is, convinced that these may be his last moments, and it's just a really tender moment between them and going back to his desire to be remembered for something. Will my character live on beyond me? Which is a cool concept when it comes to putting yourself into these stories as a character beyond yourself.
And then there's the monologue of Harvey P. Carr.
Love that monologue.
Reading the other Harvey P. Cars in the phone book.
Yeah, watching like all of it it's very down to earth and quirky, and the meaning is just kind of really subtle and hinted at the end. But
who is Harvey P. Carr?
That. Yeah, who is Harvey P. Carr and what's in a name? Mm-hmm. I loved that whole monologue, the transitions. It was very comic book.
The last thing that he wrote was Harvey P. Carr meets the Thing, in which he meets Benjamin Grimm.
Really?
From Fantastic Four.
Is this in a comic or?
It was in like Strange Tales Volume 2, I think I read. I don't know if do you have any other notes as far as that goes?
No, that's all my last thing, was that, the realization that the real characters, the real people, I keep saying characters when I'm talking about the real people, but they're real people.
They're real people.
But the thing is when you meet the real people, they also make great characters, and so you understand why this movie and why this story works. Because it's real life and it's interesting, and the way that these people present it, and their humbleness. Really every character is very humble about themselves, is the impression that you get when you're meeting them all at the end. I loved that end scene where you're getting to see even some of the characters you haven't seen throughout the movie, like Robert Crumb and their daughter, Katie, was her name? Danielle. Wow, way off. But yeah, just that last scene was just, I kind of realized they're all great characters because they're real.
As far as that goes, I think 4?
4.5.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So the highest rated movie so far.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're not counting me rating my own movies, which you shouldn't.
Exactly. I'm not. I wasn't.
Yeah, I would say 4.5. I loved it. It's so I get these movies. When I watch a movie, I decide whether or not it's going to be a permanent part of my collection or not. And this is the first one that will be a permanent part of my collection. The Running Man I really enjoyed, and I probably will find a situation to watch it again, like at a friend's house or whatever. The Running Man, put that on. Let's goof around.
Well, again, I think that was just kind of like the impetus for as far as Running Man. Right. I didn't think it was going to be something you were going to love.
Right. I liked it though. I liked it a lot more than I expected.
Yeah,
but it's
a solid flick.
I thought I would like this movie, but I really loved it.
Yeah,
so.
And like I said, this was the first one I really thought like you're gonna love, and that's why I was like, if you don't like this, I'm going to be so disappointed.
Oh yeah,
like obviously just because you like Napoleon Dynamite, I thought you might like Gentleman Bronco a bit more than you did.
Yeah,
and then there's a Dark City. It'd been a minute, and as soon as I started watching it, I was like, Jesse's gonna hate this.
We learn. That's what's really cool about watching older movies, and I want to try to recommend one that I haven't seen in a while. I was kind of toying with that idea.
Well, and I hadn't watched this movie almost since it was released on DVD. Yeah, so it's been almost 10 years.
You had to know, though, that this movie this movie ages well.
Oh, yeah.
Just like Harvey Picar.
Yeah, but I know, like, just good cast, solid acting, and it was a good premise, and I thought you would appreciate it.
I definitely did. So I was on the fence on what I was going to recommend, and I still haven't decided.
What are we watching?
It was between
the anticipation is killing me.
This one's really long, and
I'll watch a long movie, dog. Like, I got nothing but time. I literally watched a movie called The Human Condition. It's like 9 hours long. It's 3 movies.
Good Lord. It's like Pride and Prejudice, the original. So for my recommendation, I have to double check, because I gave you a list and you checked off stuff you had seen. I have to double check this. You have not seen Zodiac.
No, I haven't.
That's correct.
We've talked about this before.
I mean...
so this was in the theaters. Like, this is another one of those movies. Like, it was out. I wanted to see it. And I never did.
Well, you're going to watch it now. That's going to be our next movie. It's going to be our longest movie. But...
Yeah, it's like 3 hours. Right?
Fantastic movie. Love David Fincher. So that's going to be my recommendation. We're going to watch Zodiac for our next episode of Show and Tell.
Awesome. I'm into it.
What's your rating for American Splendor?
Yeah, 4.5 would probably be about what I would give it.
Boom. Pound it.
Yeah. Twinsies.
Wish you could see this.
We're on iTunes now, in case you aren't listening to us on iTunes. If you have Apple products or an iTunes account, do us a favor and vote us. Even if it's, or, leave a
give us a little
comment
snippet,
or whatever.
Give us a little review. If you weren't aware, we're on iTunes. Just type in Show and Tell. That's Show and Tell with an ampersand, not the word and. Although
Show ampersand.
I haven't tried the latter. It might work, but it's actually on the front page when you jump into it because it's a newer show. But yeah, check us out. Shoot us, give us a review, whether it's good or positive. Give us some feedback. Let us know what we can do better. Let us know what we're doing right. We appreciate those of you who are listening.
If you are.
And you are.
Yeah.
You are listening.
This has been
Show and Tell
with
Jesse Hughes.
And I'm Dan Gilmore.